Hello, and welcome to what is officially the transition episode between what was the Practical Stoic Podcast and what is now going to be the Walled Garden Podcast. I just wanted to take a moment before we dive into the interview portion or the conversational portion of this episode, just to reflect on the past few years of starting the Practical Stoic and kind of how we got here. And I wanted to thank every single one of you who has supported me, whether it's since the beginning in 2017 or whether you've just been listening for a few weeks. It doesn't matter. You've dedicated your time, your effort to following along as I've been diving into this philosophy of Stoicism and, taking some detours along the way. But, whether you've been listening to the podcast or, supporting me on Patreon or, getting coaching with me or just sending me an email and sharing your thoughts, your feedback of the direction that I'm going, it's all been completely life transformational for me. And I really want to thank you for that, because when I think about it, starting the Practical Stoic Podcast was one of the most important decisions I made in my life. It was certainly one of those things. I didn't know what I was getting into, but I just decided, hey, listen, if I'm going to be learning about this philosophy that's helping me so much, well, I might as well bring some people along on that journey. And I happened to have a few of the skills that I could put some things together and maybe start thinking and start speaking. And I noticed an immediate audience started to gather around listening to this. And what that did for me is it really put me in a position where I had a responsibility to start aiming higher, to start thinking deeper, to start really trying to transform the way that I think and to try and understand this philosophy in a way that I could communicate that would be effective both for me, because the most important thing is that I'm trying to take this philosophy on in my life, or I'm trying to learn and grow and see what it does for me. And hopefully as I do that, you guys are listening along and doing the same in your own lives, right? So I just wanted to thank you. This has been quite an important element of my life. And you'll also notice that in the past kind of year and a half, I've been constantly shifting, I guess, in the background, looking for which direction is right to go. Because when I quit my job a year and a half ago and decided to go into the Practical Stoic Podcast kind of full time and my coaching and everything like that, I wasn't satisfied with just coming back to this and saying, okay, cool, I'm just going to do the podcast, I'm going to do my coaching. And that. I was trying to answer a question. The question I was trying to answer is what is the most important path that I could be walking for myself, and if that involves the podcast, great. If that, it was a question of aims. What should I be aiming at? What is the right thing for me to be doing? What is the direction that I feel pulled towards? I really wanted to know that. And, the podcast was, again, a vehicle for me to express that path that I was on to you guys in a way that could also help you to maybe take some valuable lessons away and use them in your own life. And what I started noticing was I started to come to know myself a lot more, started to see the different directions that I was being pulled, whether it was, writing a book, which, is about to be on pre-order. I'm very excited. But we can talk about that when it is on pre-order. Whether it was doing more music, which is so important to me, whether, writing poetry, really diving into the coaching and being coached in return. I'm continually surprised by how I regularly feel as though I'm learning more from my clients than they are from me, because it's everybody has a unique life experience. Everybody has their own wisdom that they can share. And if you can put yourself in a position where you can constantly be kind of searching for that wisdom that other people are projecting to you, man, you can grow quickly. You can really start to see a different side of existence, really. And so I'm grateful to the people I've worked with. I'm grateful to the people who have been listening and emailing and, sharing their thoughts and supporting me. And so, over the past year and a half, I really started to ask that question: what would be the best thing that I could do? Not just skating along, but how do I structure this whole thing that I'm trying to do here in such a way that would really be beneficial for me? As the Stoics say, good for me, good for my community, good for the world, that sort of thing, expanding those circles. And so that's what brings me to the Walled Garden, right? Because I wanted to change the direction of the podcast so that we don't have to specifically focus on just Stoicism, because I'm interested in a whole bunch of things. I'm interested in poetry and just culture and music and art and philosophy and theology and Eastern philosophies, Western philosophies. I'm interested in all these things, and I want to pull together the wisdom of the world in such a way that we don't have to become ideologues about this, but we can simply live by the code of philosophy, which is to love wisdom wherever you find it, and you can find it in so many places. So I wanted to expand that, right, so that I could expand my own intellectual horizons and bring you guys along on that. But one of the other elements to this that I thought was just absolutely crucial, right, is I wanted to surround myself with people who I genuinely love, right? Who we could work together to strengthen each other, to have that tension of the dialogue where we're trying to put our ideas to the test against each other, where we're trying to release whatever beautiful, artistic, or philosophical, or endeavor that we're trying to bring into the world in a safe environment where we feel like we all have shared values and sharing them together. And anyway, I'm getting off track here, but ultimately I wanted to have mentors, and whether they come to me by people I'm about to mention, or even just setting up a community where there's a feedback loop where we get to discuss these ideas together and strengthen each other as we do. And so, I reached out to Sharon Lebell, and I reached out to Kai Whiting, and I said, hey, went to Sharon and I said, hey, would you like to work with me on something? Is there a way that we can collaborate in something? And I had a whole bunch of ideas. I kind of threw them over to her, and Sharon, in her classic amazing self, she was just like, great, let's figure this out. So she's an amazing person. Kai, very much the same. I went to him and said, look, we're putting together this thing. Do you think you'd be interested in coming along and getting involved with us here? And Kai was very much the same, very excited to get on board and to kind of go in the direction that I'm taking us. And so what I suggested to them is that we're going to start this website called thewalledgarden.com. It's going to be a part of the Walled Garden podcast. And this is going to be our community where we can go and we can think and we can explore ideas. We can push the boundaries of our thinking, right? Whether it is through philosophy or theology, or talking about religion, talking about poetry, art, culture, all of these things, right? We're all filled with this deep sense that we're in a very important time in history. And with that comes a certain responsibility for people who are interested in these kinds of questions to dig a little bit deeper and to find ways that we can, find common communities with common values to come together and solve some issues, most importantly for our individual lives, but also that ripples out into society. And so, and then I decided to go and bring along Jacob Bush as well. And Jake is, a longtime friend of mine. We've been, whether it's been working together or, just having a chat from time to time. He's in the US, and he's an amazing person who has such a rich experience and has really come to the kinds of philosophical questions that Sharon and Kai and myself are wrestling with as well, but in a way through his personal experience in his life. And he's going to be coming on and managing this whole project for us, and you'll hear him today in this conversation as well. And so that's what we're doing. Sharon and Kai and Jake and myself, we are setting up this walled garden community. And there's a whole bunch of symbolism behind that, which we talk about in today's episode. And we want to encourage you guys to come along on this kind of path with us and engage in these questions, these philosophical questions that we've been wrestling with for a few years now, but on a bigger scale, And so I wanted to tell you the two main ways that you can kind of get involved over the next few weeks, and then I want to introduce this conversation. So two main ways. So number one, if you'd like to kind of come along and actually participate in the formulation of our vision for the walled garden, then every week for the next, I think, 6 or 7 weeks, we are basically getting together. You can actually go and see the events that we've posted there on thewalledgarden.com/events, right? But if you just go to thewalledgarden.com, you'll be able to find your way around. So we're going to be having a meetup every single week with Kai, Sharon, Jake, and myself, and we're encouraging you to come along and, we want to hear your opinion about what it is that we're doing, and we want to get your feedback as well. What have you enjoyed about the Practical Stoic? What kind of questions are you grappling with in your life, and how can we serve you better to be able to experience a deeper meaning in life and deeper purpose. And so we're going to be doing these meetups every week for the next 6 or 7 weeks. We want to encourage you to come along. You can, as I said, go to that link and head there. You can register for these events. It's free to everybody. You don't have to be a member of the Walled Garden yet to join these meetups. So we just want to see you there. So for example, this week we're having a meetup where I'm going to be discussing everything that I want to contribute to the Walled Garden. And then the following week we're doing it with Sharon, and then with Kai, and then with Jake. So we're going to each have a chance to kind of put our own vision forward for the Walled Garden and what we really want to bring to it. And so, yeah, come along. We'd love to see you. Come and ask questions. Come and give your opinions. We want to see you there, right? And the other way that you can get involved is if you are keen to join up on the Walled Garden, just go to thewalledgarden.com. You can see our membership options there. You should be able to follow the links and find out where you can kind of get on board with the website. And we're really excited about what's in there. And what we're going to be doing is, for the first 100 members of the Walled Garden, we've got a discount code. It's Practical Stoic, all in caps, right? So very simple, Practical Stoic. And that's if you're going to join up with the Caretaker membership. I won't go deep into the memberships at the moment, but there's 3 memberships that we've got at the moment. You can see what they are if you go on the website. But if you join up at the Caretaker membership, which gives you access to all of the writings and music and poetry and meetups and all this sort of stuff that we're doing on the website, it basically gives you everything you need there. Then we're going to give you, I think it's just over 20% off for your membership, and you don't have to pay at the start. You only start paying after, I think, a month. And so, yeah, just go over there, check it out, see what you think. But if you use that discount code, as I said, Practical Stoic, that's for the first 100 members joining up on thewalledgarden.com. So those are the 2 major ways that you can kind of get involved. But as I said, come along to the meetups. We just want to see you guys. We want to hear you. We want to see where you'd like us to take the Walled Garden podcast as well as the community. And now I get to introduce this wild conversation. So look, we had a few technical mix-ups with the timing and everything of our conversation today, but nonetheless, I hope you really enjoy this because I had so much fun talking with Kai and Sharon and Jake. And what we did today is essentially we shared our vision for the Walled Garden. What is it that we're trying to do here? What kind of questions are we trying to ask? And where do we want this thing to go? So we kind of jump around a bit. I understand that we jump around a lot, but there's a bit of fun in that. Sharon has to leave a little bit early. That's fine, right? And Jake is actually driving at the time, so he was only listening to us for most of the conversation. Then he comes in at the very end, and I'd encourage you to wait till the end and hear what Jake has to say as well, because you've heard Sharon and Kai and myself talking all the time, and I'm sure you're excited to hear more of them because Kai and Sharon are amazing people, right? But it'd be good for you to hear Jake as well, because he comes from the perspective of somebody who actually is really keen for this project because he feels like he really needs it in his life as well, just as Sharon and Kai and myself feel as well. But Jake has a unique perspective on this, looking in and thinking, like, hey, I'm really excited about this, and here's why. And so he might have a similar perspective to some of you out there with the kind of meaning crisis that we're experiencing in the world today, the kind of purpose crisis. And so, look, I'm excited for you to listen to this conversation, so I'm not going to take up any more time. We're excited. Welcome to the Walled Garden podcast, and I'm just really keen for you guys to come along with us on this new direction of the show. And again, thank you to everybody who has supported myself on, the Practical Stoic over the past few years. It's been really amazing. So thank you, and enjoy this conversation with my new collaborators, Sharon Lebell, Kai Whiting, and Jacob Bush. Okay, so welcome to the very, very first episode of the Walled Garden podcast, the natural evolution of the Practical Stoic. And I guess, so what we're going to do in this episode today is I would hopefully like to start by introducing exactly what the hell it is that we're all doing here. So we do have Sharon Lebell in the room. We do have Kai Whiting in the room, and we also have Jake Bush. So for those of you who have been listening for a long time to the Walled Garden podcast, the Practical Stoic podcast, you'll probably be very aware that I am never too comfortable, always trying to see what the next thing is that I can, push into the picture of what it is that I'm putting together here. with the podcast, and this episode represents the next natural evolution, as Kai and I have talked about before, of the Practical Stoic. And so I would like to introduce maybe Sharon first to share her thoughts on what we're doing here. And I'll finish off the episode with my thoughts. But Sharon, I guess welcome to the Walled Garden project, and if you want to just share your thoughts about what it is that we're all here for, that would be wonderful.
I'm thrilled to be here with all of you. I just have a few words about the spirit of the walled garden. I think of the walled garden as a place where intentional innocence is honored and encouraged. It's a place where true knowledge is respected, but cleverness is left at the door, lest it blind one to revelation. The walled garden is a community of people who want to let out a sigh because at last we've found our people, a group consisting of varying backgrounds, ages, and creeds, but guided by a common reverence for wonder and life's mysteries. The walled garden is friends who have noticed tender or unsung artifacts that they wish to share with others who want to pay attention to and receive them. The walled garden is a virtual space for making and sharing music, art, poetry, insight, and most of all, questions about how to live the best possible life. The walled garden is an experimental friendship circle spanning the globe, uniting people of goodwill to uncover ways that virtue might be amplified in society as a whole. The walled garden welcomes the fool, the tentative, the explorer, the trier, the maker, the supposer. The walled garden is a place of connection that fosters inner freedom within each of its members. And I think I'll just stop right here and let other people say their thoughts.
Well, I'd really like to maybe just talk a moment about why I've brought you onto this project, Sharon, and maybe add to a couple of things that you're saying there and get your response. Because you, Sharon, have been somebody who, since the first moment that I spoke with you, I knew that there was a very important connection between us. And I think the first time that really manifested itself to me was when you said that words are your stock in trade. And that something about that statement just flipped something in my mind and started thinking, wow, you can deal with language, the English language as your tool of trade, and to see the possibilities that can come from you choosing words carefully and planting them, hopefully among fertile soil and seeing what comes out of it. There's something so beautiful about that, and I think that we have a kind of a mutual respect between us. I've adored reading your The Art of Living, your translations of Epictetus's writings, and you in return have been somebody who constantly has encouraged me to allow the goods of my soul to rise up to where I'm now about to release a book that literally wouldn't be released, Sharon, if it wasn't for your kindness and your careful approach with a young writer, a young poet is what I would consider myself now. And so, Sharon, I'm so happy to have you here. And there's one other thing that you said recently, a few months ago, that I think really speaks to what it is that we're all trying to do here with the Walled Garden. And for those who are listening, they still have no idea what the hell it is because I haven't even said it. We are starting, we're kind of moving from Patreon, where I now put all of my content, to thewalledgarden.com, which is our new community website where we have a whole bunch of good stuff on offer, which we will get to. But Sharon, a few months ago, you said to me, Simon, how can we get people to see what is? How can we get people to, truly engage in life? And that question, alongside kind of my own studies and really starting to develop this, this deep feeling that there's something extremely important about what it is that we're all doing here, and there's nothing simple, there's nothing trivial about life and what it is that we're all engaging in here. And it requires a certain amount of seriousness in the way that we engage with life. And I think that in a way is what we're trying to do here, is to engage with life seriously, and to truly invite people onto that same mission of discovering who one truly is and what one's purpose might be and where one might be led if they were to truly take with grave seriousness the insights that we learn from these ancient teachers and from culture and music and art and all these things. So, Sharon, I guess I just wanted you to get your comment on this. I think that part of what we're doing here is taking very seriously this journey that all of us in some way have been on, of discovering philosophy and wisdom and these sorts of things. I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to add to that.
Well, I think one thing this community can do is help cure the loneliness some of us feel in our own journeys, and also to make us less self-involved, because we realize that we're all in this mystery together. And we're all afraid, but we're also ready to go. We've got songs to sing, and I would like our coming together in all the forms that we do to be an inspiration for each person to realize over and over again that their life counts. That's it. And what do you do about it? What are you for? That's not an accusation, but what are we for besides just being bags of meat sucking up oxygen, to be crude? What are we for?
Yeah. That's massive. Yeah. What are we for? It's stepping back and watching humanity from afar and thinking, we're actually up to something here. And you watch your own life and you think, yeah, you're actually up to something as well. We're trying to ask these specific questions, and they're important questions. And I guess, Kai, I want to bring you in as well, because you're an incredibly important piece to this puzzle of the walled garden. And I've known you for a few years now, and had a very similar experience with you, Kai, as in what you have offered me in your friendship has been something completely useful and genuine in my opinion, which was, you really encouraged me constantly to push myself into the direction of the things that are calling me out, the directions that are pulling me forward. And you do it in a way that encourages me to, well, let me put it like this. One of my favorite ideas from Alan Watts is he talks about how the world can be divided in terms of people. You can divide people into the prickles and the goo. and in many ways, I think Sharon is on the gooey side, right? The people who kind of think that life's a little bit gooey, they're not necessarily the hardcore academics, but they might be the artists, the mystics, the poets, those sorts of people. But then he also goes on to say, well, you've got these prickles, the hardcore academics, the hard thinkers, the dedicated philosophers. And there's always a little bit of tension between the two. But he says quite rightly that life isn't prickles or goos, it's prickly goo and gooey prickles. and so, Kai, I think in many ways you have been a prickle to me, the academic over my shoulder saying, do better, do better, do better. And there's something very important about that. And so, I think that bringing you into this project, Kai, was in a way my way of balancing out all the gooiness and saying, let's get some academia in here as well, and bring those two worlds together. So Kai, I want you to talk about, kind of what you're excited about, I guess, with this project, and give us your thoughts on everything so far.
I think I'm the most excited about the fact that it's a garden. It is something that does require the care and artistic license that I don't have. But it's also something that has structure, right? So a garden isn't a free for all. It isn't it isn't a weed patch, or I don't necessarily like using that word, but a patch of ground that has been sporadically it's seeded and things have been grown. And, some of that's great, some of that's, not so great, and some of that's just really not helpful for that piece of land. And I kind of see Facebook like that. You throw a couple of seeds out, things grow. Some of the things are really useful, some of them are neutral, and you get a lot of bad weeds, quote unquote. And I'm not talking about people, I'm talking about ideas, right? So I'm not suggesting that any person is a weed, but more the ideas like, for example, Stoicism is a little S. It's about being cold and hard and resilient in a very unusual way. And there's no we in the virtues, which is Sharon's been pointing out in ways that are different the way I would structure the argument, but she's right. We need to have the we aspect of the virtues. I would perhaps say maybe not we virtues, but certainly the core of the we needs to be in the virtues. And I think that's what a garden does. You put seeds in, but you're very careful about which seeds, how many seeds you put in, and how much competition you have. It's, you've got a healthy competition because you're all trying to get to the light, to knowledge. But at some point you say, hang on, there's a certain way we need to grow if we're going to grow together. The other aspect is the mystical aspect of a garden. And I'm not saying that one needs to be particularly religious, but one does walk in a garden. God walks in the Garden of Eden. God could have chosen to walk anywhere, but walks there. And if you don't want to use God, then you can say, but when I'm having a moment and I want to lose myself today, what did I do? I went to the sea, right? I'd go, you'd potter around. And I thought this was great. This is an opportunity to do something like that. I also saw something like, for example, the College of Stoic Philosophers, which Dirk runs, but I thought that was a very, very academic space. I kind of see that as the building, the Stoic building, if the Stoics is like, that's the really structured building classroom. And then we're kind of like, everybody would open the doors and, we'd all go outside and we'd have a chat. And it's through the chatting that we kind of go, I've been reading, say, Epictetus's Discourses, and I was reading Masonius Rufus. It's in the garden that we debate. It's in the garden that things really get interesting. We all come out of the classroom, we all come out of, whatever, however we decide to learn. And then there's a space to be. And it's a garden. So there's no rules, but there are rules. So you can't say whatever you want. Yes. You can't do whatever you want. You can't trample on anybody. But you can meander in a way that you cannot meander when you're stuck in my classroom, my physical classroom, so to speak. And I just felt this was missing in the contemporary Stoic movement. And the last thing was that, we all come from sort of different religious backgrounds, so I'll just leave it like that. But I felt that the only other organized kind of garden I have seen, and for example, Massimo Pallucci runs with Greg Lopez in New York, is a very atheistic interpretation. And that's not the kind of garden that I wanted to tend to. I'm not saying that our garden would be better or worse. It's more like, what kind of garden do I want to tend to? And it's not one that's an atheistic, agnostic interpretation. And then, of course, I was just very excited. I've heard about Sharon's work. I know about Sharon's work, but I wasn't able to be like, I work with Sharon. And that's something I'm really excited about, because I do need a bit of, goo to make it a bit softer, the prickles. Sometimes my message gets lost because I'm like, no, academically speaking, I have to plant my flag and it has to be this way. And then you think, well, maybe Sharon and I agree, it's just the way it's framed. So I can reframe it a little bit and she can, soften the edges. And the same with you. And I think that, for example, you have the, marketing and the face of the organization much more than I do, just the way it is. And I felt like we could all come together because a garden that's well tended is tended by many. And also to give space for other people to tend. So I think that's my view of the garden and why I think this garden is necessary. Because to me, it's very important. It's like, not only can we do a garden, yeah, of course we can. Should we? My argument is yes, because if we root that garden in the logos, then it makes sense to do that.
Yeah. Absolutely. In a band, we would say tutti. Everybody agree. Yeah. So it's Kai, I think what I really love about your understanding of what we're doing here is this idea of having rules, but no rules, but being guided by a common vision, and having the freedom to meander. I like that word. And Sharon has, we've talked a lot about wandering and allowing your mind to just sit with an idea, not to say yes or no, but to explore the possibilities. And both of you have been kind of following along with me over the past few years since I kind of quit my job and everything. And one thing that's certainly been happening to me is that, which has naturally led to the Walled Garden, has been I've actually started to really push the boundaries of my thinking, but not necessarily in an academic writing sort of way, in poetry and with photography and with music and all of these things that to me are so ingrained in my nature. Like if we talk about this idea from Stoicism, living in agreement with nature, I truly feel as though I'm getting closer and closer to that every day by paying attention to the ways in which I naturally express the truths I'm trying to get at. And so, I can't wait to be involved with this project whereby we all get to basically choose how is the way that I best communicate the deepest wisdom of my heart or my experience in the world to people in a way that can help them to see something different. And so in that way, we're in this walled garden where, as we've said, you have music and poetry and, academic writing and philosophical discourse, bringing all of these things together in a way that can encourage everybody to do the same in their own lives. See, I wrote this thing and I would like to know what you guys think of this. I wrote this thing recently. It was like the sage does not teach people to be like the sage. The sage teaches people to be like them, the truest them that is within them that they maybe haven't seen yet, and I feel like that in a way, that's what I really want to do here with the Walled Garden, is encourage people to come in and say, you don't have to be a philosopher or a poet or a musician you don't have to be anything. All we want is for you to come in here and engage in this community whereby we are trying to encourage you to bring out the absolute best of yourself in the way that best comes forth from you, in the way that most makes sense to you. And so I think that for me, a huge part of this is just helping people to get aligned with their own nature and who they are and how they can uniquely contribute to this project called humanity in a way that is meaningful and productive for all, So that's kind of, that's what I really like about your kind of way of thinking about this, Kai, is like, we're all very different here and perhaps we have a shared vision, but let's push the boundaries of our thinking, and really try to engage in these questions. And my only final thought before I throw it back to you for your thoughts, Kai, is it is funny to think that we're basically a joke here. I know we've mentioned it's like, you know, a Jew, a Muslim, and an ex-Mormon walk into a bar, you know, and it's like, this is what you get, right? But
what you get.
I'm just so excited because, you know, Sharon, you've watched me as I've kind of moved in the direction of, you know, now I'm studying a Master of Divinity and thinking theologically, and these sorts of questions are in many ways in our culture being pushed to the side or villainized, or you know, the question of God, you know, even I'm constantly surprised that we do not talk about it enough, just how much the Stoics talked about God and providence and sacredness and all these things. And so for me, I think that this is a space where we can comfortably have those conversations and be willing to not know the answer, but to just explore the answer and to have a great time doing that. So I don't know, Kai, any thoughts that you had on my large ramble there?
I always have to push back on you just because of the nuance.
Yeah,
so the sage, the sage. It depends what you mean. So the sage the sage does encourage one to be a sage in the sense that a sage means one who has a character that is incapable of making a moral mistake. What you meant though, which I know was what you meant, was he or she does not encourage them to be. So if Kai was a sage, to be the sage like Kai is the sage. So if I were a sage, and I'm far from it, but let's imagine just for the sake of simplicity, I am a sage. I should encourage you to be a sage, but not say that to become the sage, you have to be like me.
Yeah.
And I know that's what you were trying to say. So first I have to push you back against that.
And see, this is why I freaking love you, Kai. You just, because I need that, you know, and one of the, you know, like you and I share a common interest now in the writings of and lectures of Jordan Peterson, for example. One of the things that both you and him do for me is pull me up and say, you know, like, because he does it via, like, because I've listened to him so much that every so often I'll say something and I'll think, no, that's not what I mean, or no, I should say it in a different way to get clearer about the words that I'm using. And so you certainly have done that for me a lot, Kai. Is just, I remember sending you like this thing that I wrote to, you know, try and get a grant here in Australia, and your feedback that you gave back to me, I wasn't paying you or anything, but you just came back to me with this hardcore academic feedback. And I thought, man, this guy really wants me to use my words carefully in order to progress and to have benefit in this world. And so, you know, I just thought, you know, that's one of the things that I love about you, Kai, is your commitment to telling me the truth constantly, even if it's against what I'm saying or, you know, trying to clarify something. So I don't know if Jake, if you want to jump in, we've got Jake here who is taking care of our project management in this whole thing. And Sharon has to get going. Oh no. Okay. We're going to have to do a part 2. Well, perhaps why don't I wrap this up then? I guess I'm going to read a couple of things here, and then we will. I'll share basically what our path is going to be for the next 7 weeks. So this is what I wrote about what we're doing in the Walled Garden. I kind of stayed up a little bit last night, and I think the way that I'm learning to communicate best is through poetry. So this is kind of the way that it seems to me. So, welcome to the Walled Garden. Here, nature and culture harmonize, and their tune is sweet, for they are brought into alignment by the universal logos. Here we allow chaos to manifest itself creatively, as spoken by Jordan Peterson. Here we seek balance, harmony, and wisdom. Here we seek the depths as well as the heights. Here we plant seeds on fertile plains and we watch them grow into flourishing gardens. Here we offer in humility and courage the goods of our souls, and yet we do not seek praise nor scorn, but a watchful eye and a listening ear and a wondering mind and a heart that yearns for wisdom. So this, to me, seems like what we're trying to do is to allow the goods of our soul, as Seneca would have said, to come into the world, and to hope that there could be nothing better than if there was a watchful eye and a listening ear and somebody who truly cared to pay attention to what it is that we're trying to figure out. Perhaps not specifically what the way that we're doing it, but the questions we're asking, the way that we're trying to approach it. And then in terms of values for the walled garden, I was kind of thinking, I wrote this, and I think that this to me encapsulates a lot of the way that we're going to be approaching all of the questions that we're asking. So this is what I wrote. To virtue, truth, and wisdom, we are bound by sacred thread, as the universal logos guides us toward the light ahead. That's all I wrote for that part. There's a light that's pulling us forward. You know, it's the kind of questions that we're asking. It's the kind of problems that we're going to try and solve for our modern cultures. And I say that, I'm not saying that we are going to save our cultures, but we're engaging in the process of rejuvenating and of bringing the best of what we've learned from the past into our modern age. And in a way, we're all kind of being led by this kind of little light that we believe that there's something important in what we're doing here. And so I guess I just wanted to throw it out. I'm excited to be working with you all. This is going to be so much fun. And I guess what I'll do is at the start of the episode, when I release it, I'll introduce all of the details, like here's where you go and, you know, here's the discount and everything. I can do that at the start.
I mean, sorry, I can stay on if you want. And I was thinking we could say just a little bit, I know Sharon has to go, about what we can expect. And we can say things like, you know, the forum bit. I think that has to go in part one as well. So I can do that. Sharon doesn't mind.
Yeah.
We can say what we expect to be, you know, what can you expect from the walled garden, right? I think that needs to be somewhere.
Are you happy for us to continue then, Sharon? And if you need to go, that's fine.
I do need to go.
Sorry, Sharon, it's my fault.
No, it's not your fault. Don't be silly. You guys are wonderful. Thank you for this time. There will be many more good times.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Can't wait.
Bye.
Thanks,
for
Sharon.
now.
Bye for now.
Bye. So long.
So Kai, maybe we should just start quickly by saying to everybody who is listening, I know this is somewhat of a disjointed introduction to the walled garden, but that's okay. Like, it still represents exactly what we're doing here and the way that we're kind of doing it. But over the next 6 weeks after this one, we are going to be having a series of conversations where we're going to invite anybody who's been a listener of the walled garden, or just anyone who wants to come along, to come and attend and engage in a discussion with us around what the walled garden is going to be and how we're going to approach it. And I should just let everybody know that for the next 3 weeks, we're going to be having a conversation with, or 4 weeks, with each of us specifically. So it'll be like, okay, Simon, you know, what are you excited about contributing to the walled garden? So I'll go through everything that I'm looking to contribute in the walled garden. And then we'll do that the same with Kai and Jake and Sharon. And so this will be a good opportunity. If anybody wants to come along, we'd love for you to be there to ask questions and to engage in conversation with all of us around exactly the direction that we're going with this. And so, Kai, what else do you think is important to talk about here?
Well, what do I think, or we think, so we've discussed this, when I say I, we'd actually discuss this quite behind the scenes, what we think that you would get out of being, you know, a member, a person wandering, meandering around our garden. What do you get from, say, the walled garden, which is a subscription model, that you don't get from being in a Facebook group? I think that's key. So for me, it is structured. There is structured learning. There's going to be conversations that do speak about not only Stoicism, but predominantly Stoicism. And say, for example, you know, things like might be Stoicism and marriage. It might be Stoicism and faith. It might be Stoicism and poetry, right? It's not all going to be very highbrow. Some of it will be, I'm sure, with Sharon, practical workshops and yourself, like how you use Stoic principles to help bring out your music. If, for example, it could be about Stoicism and training. So basically, because we've got so many, you know, so many different backgrounds, I think the wonderful thing is that there's going to be something for everybody and enough for them to stay. So I would love to do, and I will do a talk at some point on, say, Stoicism and free speech. So if one is concerned about what on earth does Stoicism have to do in common with free speech, or why is it relevant today? So we're not going to do, if you are a member of the College of Stoic Philosophers, it's not going to be particularly a breakdown of very specific Stoic principles and why they are Stoic and why they're not, let's say, Aristotelian. It's more going to be like, okay, I have this practical challenge in life. How can I apply Stoicism to that? How can I become a better musician? How can I start poetry? How can I live the life of meaning as an artist? What do I do when I'm told I'm not allowed to say X, Y, or Z on campus? How can I be a better student? What does the Stoics say about war? What does that mean to me as a soldier? What does it mean today to be interested in Stoicism and be a woman? Right. So I'm not going to be in that conversation particularly, although I'm hoping to join a little bit just to ask a few questions. But I think that's where this is what is directed conversation. We're also going to have some debates, because I've just spoken to Massimo Palucci, as everybody was saying, can you guys debate on why the Stoic God is important or why the Stoic God exists even? We're going to have to iron that out, but there is going to be a space for polite debate because it's a garden, right? Yeah. So we're not going to scream at each other, but there's a space for that. I myself going to be involved in a forum, so bring your questions, sort of agony uncle. So I will be looking over, okay, what kind of questions are people asking me, or what kind of information are they? For example, I would like to adopt a child, and is that a Stoic thing to do? And giving some information about, okay, well, it depends on the context. Can you afford to look after a child? Do you already have children? Are you married or with a partner? Which country are you in? And things like that. Very specific answers to specific questions. It's not going to be a very generic answer. It's going to be like, Simon, if this is your context that you have provided me and this is your situation, here is the kind of things that I would ask you to think about. I don't know the answer. I'm not you, but this is the kind of things I think would be helpful to think about, which I think is missing if you look at Stoicism from a theological perspective. You can have a very atheistic interpretation about why you value what you do, or how you come to believing that virtue is the only good. The Stoics are very clear that we need a spiritual perspective on that. So again, I don't think there's much space in Facebook to do that. There's a lot of noise. And so we're going to be very careful about creating the kind of questions that we answer and the kind of noise that we let in. So we want there to be harmony. We're not going to be dictating to people what they can say and what they can't say, but it's not going to be a free-for-all like Facebook. So to me, that brings in quality, control, which needs to happen, and it brings in people who are really interested, or we have the richness of that debate. And it's a circle of friends, as opposed to anybody who's got an account with a social media company. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons, again, that I'm really excited to have you on board is your dedication to revivifying the Stoic philosophy in our modern age, but in a way that doesn't assume that the Stoics back then were idiots because they talked about God, or were insufficient in some way in their understanding of the world. And I think that there's so much good stuff to bring into the conversation from the Stoics that can really transform the way you see the world, that has a theological tilt to it, and so you have to start thinking in that way. But in terms of my own, I guess, direction, I find myself saying, well, and we're going to get into these conversations about what each of us specifically want to contribute. But, I've found that in my writing and in my music, in my poetry, there's these common kind of threads that are coming along, and it's not in search of stoicism, it's in search of wisdom, and that to me is the adventure that I'm going on at the moment. And so, I want to contribute to the Walled Garden in a way that helps people to kind of come along on this adventure with me, whether it is through the photography, the poetry, the music, or just writing. I want people to be engaged in that question of, well, it's the same question that Jordan Peterson asks. He says, conceptualize the highest possible good for yourself that would be good for you and your family and your culture and the world at large. And you should move towards that. Take a couple of steps towards that. And he asked that question, because have you really got anything better to do? That is the moment that really pushed me on this path of trying to develop a deeper understanding of the wisdom of the past, and the beauty of nature, and how they can come together and allow me to seek some sort of deeper connection with the cosmos, you might say, in this kind of cosmological, cosmopolitan worldview. And so I want to bring people along on that, try to help people to see something different, to feel something different, to hear something different in music, to experience their lives in a way that revivifies the world again, and perhaps you might say re-enchants the world around us. And so, like, you bring this real orthodox Stoic thread to the conversation, and I love that. I probably am leaning more in the direction of allowing myself to go where it is that I feel I'm being taken here, and to see where that adventure takes us in terms of seeking deeper wisdom and that sort of thing. Now, sorry, go on.
Well, I think it's also important to say, because we've been very clear in the conversations behind the scenes, that we are not going to turn people away just because they have an allegiance to another viewpoint. So it is predominantly, Stoicism and an orthodox kind of view of that. But also we were discussing, for example, and I saw this actually at StoicCon at the weekend, that you mentioned Jordan Peterson. And in the chat, I was like, oh my gosh, JP has been mentioned, right? And it's like, well, we're not going to be the biggest Jordan Peterson fans ever, because we're not going to, but we are going to say what is important about his ideas. What do they mean? Which ones are useful? Because not all of his ideas are useful, but not every, that's true for anybody. Which ones of his ideas are useful? Which ones are in line with Stoicism? Which ones are helpful for us to distinguish between, say, Christian virtues, or Jordan Peterson's perspective on Christian virtues and the Stoic virtues? And what is important about meaning? So it very frustrates me, for example, and we've talked about this, that on Facebook, you mentioned, one mentions Jordan Peterson, and suddenly there's a whole sort of batch of angry people. Or somebody mentions, let's say Marx, and say, well, he has absolutely, Marx's ideas have absolutely no meaning or value. Well, that's just simply not true. Or feminist ideas, they have no meaning, no value, and Stoicism is the Borisism. And I think with the walled garden is like, okay, what seeds have you got in your hand? Throw them in. We've got gardeners around. It's not a free-for-all. We'll see if they take. We'll look at them. We'll look at the impression, right? We'll see, okay, is this useful for the garden? So again, we are but we are having space for debate, but it's not a cacophony of voices, right? And John Peterson's very clear about that as well. Like, it's not like everybody gets to scream and jump, and because there would be no difference to that on Facebook. But there's guidance, and I also want to emphasize that eventually we are looking and considering bringing out courses and things like that are very very basic, so that people are like, I like the walled garden, but where does that take me? What does the Stoic God mean, or what does Stoicism mean? If I'm a beginner Stoic, what do I have? I mean, I'm not the one going to run that course. But if I'm a beginner Stoic, what is it I really want to know if I'm not an academic and I'm not interested in doing that? So I think that's really key, that there is this sort of community. There is an opportunity to be heard. It's not if you don't toe the Stoic line on absolutely everything. So if you happen to be an atheist and Stoic, of course you can discuss it with me and argue. Maybe you can persuade me. I hope you can persuade me on something, because otherwise it means I'm very closed-minded and I shouldn't be running a garden. So I'm really excited about being poked and prodded and seeing what it means when people come together and build something organic.
Absolutely. And I want to second your opinion there, that it's this is, I know that we are bringing into the conversation these ideas of God, and potentially somebody like Jordan Peterson, who is kind of controversial in the Stoic community for some reason or another, or that there's a lot of things that we're saying in this whole conversation today that people might think doesn't really make sense for me, not interested, right? But we really, I think the central animating spirit, as I said there in that little poem that I wrote, is kind of this quest for truth, wisdom, virtue, these kind of highest of aims. And and to allow ourselves to have those conversations in a way that, you know, brings everybody into the conversation so that we can all learn and grow together, you know, through that kind of Socratic dialogue, or that that common shared value of human conversation, and what the possibilities of what can come from that. And so, yeah, and as I said, I think I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction before the episode, so that people actually know what it is that we're doing with the website and everything like that. But I think that people have now a general idea of the spirit with which we're coming into this, you know, this endeavor. But I do want to also just say, hey, Jake, if you want to come in here and, you know, introduce yourself for everybody at home, that would be great.
For sure. Yeah, I've been listening to the different points you've been making, and a lot of things jump out at me. But I should probably start with some background, because this is the first time that anyone's heard my voice on the air. So first off, I'm just extremely grateful to be a part of this. When I look at the, you know, Kai and Sharon and you, Simon, who've contributed so much to these different conversations, I'm just honored, to be honest, that I get to be a part of this, because I do come from what I would say is a fairly different background. And what that is sort of the background of your typical 30-year-old guy who's trying to make it in society, right? But what I have to offer here, I think, you know, like Simon mentioned earlier, that the conversation came up between the two of us because I kind of had the skill set to be assisting with a lot of things behind the scenes. But at the same time, I feel like I kind of represent a person who, you know, can greatly benefit from the walled garden. So I have been working in big tech for several years now. I just turned 30, and I've kind of begun this process of exploring, you know, all of these different ideas, especially the idea of how do I live a good life, right? What truly brings me joy? And I think I bring the perspective of having seen a lot of what goes on in society when society tells us we're supposed to be doing, right? And that is, you know, go to school, go out, get a job, earn money and buy things, and make sure you like 50 Instagram posts a day and consume, you know. And I got to a point where I'm like, I want to be contributing. I want to be learning from others in a more sort of healthy space than the one that I'm currently in. Because when I was younger, I was really into music. I wrote songs. I learned the guitar. I was in a couple different music groups. I wrote poetry and all that. And then it was sort of when I got into my 20s that, you know, adulthood happened, and I kind of had, you know, certain pressures placed upon me about, well, now it's time to, you know, get a real job and start earning money and start contributing to society in that way. And that's not to say that that's a bad thing. You know, anyone who's working in any career is you know, they're providing for themselves, and that's something that is excellent. But I did reach the point that I asked myself, is this it? You know, is this bringing me joy? Because rather than exploring music and art and philosophy and reading, you know, books with big ideas like I used to, I found that by the time I turned 30, it was work, go home, social media, Instagram, Facebook, you know, Netflix, go to bed, rinse and repeat. And I just kind of hit the point that when Simon brought this up and the whole concept of the walled garden, I was just like, yes, I want to be a part of this. I said, you know, I'll be the coffee delivery boy if you need me to be. I'll do whatever you want in this organization to help out, because I truly feel like society needs to explore these questions right now, right? Of what truly matters to people. I recently read a book. I can't remember which one it was because I'm always in the middle of like 4 books now. But sort of making the point of, if you ask a person what's most important to you in your life and what brings you joy, normally you hear the answers that, my family brings me joy. My kids bring me the most joy, like they're the most important to me, et cetera, et cetera. And the book kind of challenged that. And they said, does your behavior support that's truly the most important thing to you? Because are you prioritizing the cultivation of those things, or are you prioritizing the cultivation of earning more money or earning more status or earning more Facebook likes, right? And I think we're at a kind of a pivotal moment for humanity where technology has advanced so rapidly that none of us really know what we're doing, with this new technology, and it can be harnessed in really, really bad ways, and it can also be harnessed in really, really good ways. And I think that's what we're trying to do here is create an environment and a sort of an ecosystem where people can come together and feel that sense of community and have conversations and healthy debates about bigger things than just the day-to-day grind, and working in a company, in sort of a management position. I've talked to so many people who just feel like they don't have a purpose in life. They ask themselves, what is the point of all this? I wake up every morning, I work so that I can pay rent, and then I do it again the next day. And to me, getting back into exploring, art and music and reading and all of those things that brought me so much joy in the past, exploring big ideas and contributing to big conversations, has allowed me to, Sharon said this early on in the podcast, and it really stuck out to me, regain that sense of wonder for life. Life is not just to be slogged through. Life should be a beautiful, wonderful, sometimes painful, but overall, joyful experience. How do we achieve that? And what are the ideas that we have in terms of making that happen? And so I feel like I sort of represent a person who's on this journey, right? I don't come from the wealth of knowledge that the other contributors do, but I come from the, experience in the trenches of what it's like when we don't have a walled garden to kind of take refuge in, and we're just kind of thrown into the storms of society and all the chaos that's happening around us, So
yeah,
that was a bit long-winded, but just really, really excited to be a part of it.
No, Jake, that's everything that you said was really meaningful, man. And I I think you did a great job of expressing exactly what it is that we're trying to do here, just trying to find out, what is most important in life and how can we move closer to that. And for everybody who's listening as well, it's like, one of the reasons I brought Jake on is because he's an absolute powerhouse at what he does. He's quite brilliant, and he's going to be in many ways the warrior behind us, pushing us in the right direction and making sure that everything's running on time and making sure that everybody's getting what they need out of this project. But he's also a wonderful, writer and musician. And so I'm encouraging him as well to let the goods of his soul come out in the walled garden as well. Jake, whenever you want to contribute in whatever way you can or want to, we want to hear that as well. And that brings me to just quickly an important point here, which is that one of the things that we want out of this walled garden is to encourage participation in everybody who's in there. So, sharing the best wisdom that you have to offer the group, sharing the best insights that have come to you from your own life and your own experience. How can we all learn from each other here? And in a way grow together? It's quite an exciting prospect. So I don't know, Kai, Jake, do we have anything else that we really need to add here? I mean, I'm going to do an introduction at the start of this where I take people through where they can go, what deals we're offering for the first 100 members and all that sort of stuff. But other than to say, please come and join us over the next 7 weeks, and we'll include notes in the show notes for where you can do that. Is there anything else that we need to add?
Just one last thing. So I think Jake certainly is one kind of one kind of person that would definitely benefit from the walled garden for all the reasons that he said. I think Sharon brings in a different flavor, and I think particularly women, but not only, again, women that could really say, what does Stoicism do for me? or what could it do for me as a framework? How can I walk in the in the world as a woman, as a Stoic? Because there are places that say that's not possible or not probable. So I think that's key. And I think that what our people that we're going to invite, and I'm going to be more involved in the podcast with you, is like, if you've been into Stoicism for a long time, I think, again, we're going to bring in nuances and look at it in a slightly different way and say modern Stoicism does. Because, again, we don't want treading on people's toes. And I want to just say, like, modern Stoicism does a very, very good job of introducing Stoicism in a certain flavor. And we're just going for, okay, what's a different expression of that? And doesn't mean that, again, that ours is better or worse or vice versa. Just like, okay, if modern Stoicism focuses on a certain interpretation, what do we bring? Perhaps that's something you'd also like to explore. So I think it's key if you say, well, I'm not in my 30s and I'm not in the tech world. So what does it mean to me? Well, if you're an artist, for example, I think it's clear that you're going to get support in your journey as an artist. I think if you are a writer, as opposed to, say, a painter, you'd also get help in your journey. I think the only caveat I would say is that when we say, like, please bring in your contribution, I don't mean quote mine things. I don't mean copy and paste a sentence. It's really like, okay, if this sentence is important, why did it touch you? In what way did it touch you? In what way did it make you see a truth, right? Because if people think, I'll just quote, copy and paste, meditations, that's not what we mean. It's really about being sincere and building community. And community is not built by simply copying and pasting. The more you put in, the more you get out. So I think that's also something that I just would add. The only thing I would add, I think that's everything I have to say, at least today.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, sorry, Jake, go on.
Yeah, if I could just add one thought to that. So one of the reasons that Simon brought me into this is that I do that background, working in tech for the purpose of bringing insight on markets and people want.
Jake, you're just cutting out there a bit, which is actually kind of ironic because you're talking about being in the tech space. But so
is it back yet? Or?
For everybody who's at home, this whole conversation has been a representation of that chaos manifesting itself creatively, right? The walled garden. It's like, there's been some direction, but not a lot. But we're talking about general ideas about what we're doing here, and on top of that, it's been disjointed conversation, but it's been so much fun. Jake, are you in a better spot now? Can we hear you?
Let's see. Can you hear me better now?
Yes. Go on.
Yes. Okay. I'll try to make it quick in case it happens again. I was just going to say that, part of my background is in market research, which is understanding what people, but in a space of what do people want in terms of things to buy, right? And products. And I said to Simon, I said, I want to move that skill set into, how do we identify what people are looking for spiritually or personally or emotionally or in any aspect of their life, And so I think all of us would agree that the purpose of the walled garden isn't for people to come in and learn from, the people who started it. I think anybody in any kind of lifestyle or way of life to come in and say, I have these questions about life. I have these problems in life. I have these ideas about life, and that can kind of drive forward. That's what we would consider, using the metaphor, planting more seeds in the garden and exploring those ideas together. So it's an open space where people can come and bring their own thoughts, right? And then the whole community can contribute. So it's there. Doesn't have something to offer.
Oh, you're going away again, but yeah, I think you speak to something that has been kind of dawning upon me over the past year, which has been, as I coach people or as I hold meetups and all this sort of stuff, I always find that I feel like I'm being coached by my clients because I'm always learning something great from them, from their experience, the way that they see the world, or, the questions that they're asking. And I think it's in that sharing, that coming together and having these common shared values where we can engage in these, in these kinds of questions and these kinds of conversations. It's just going to be so much fun, and fun in a useful way, fun in a productive way, fun in a way that it lifts us all. So I think I think that this is just a really good, this is a good place to finish it up and say, we hope that everybody, even if they don't go and join up immediately, come and join in our conversations over the next 6 weeks. We are looking to solidify our understanding of exactly the direction we're going through conversation, through dialogue, through asking these questions. And so we want to see you at these meetups. We will post links in the show notes to where you can go and register for that, as well as links to where you can go to the walled garden. But other than that, I think we best just leave it at that. And thank you, Kai, and thank you, Jake, for sticking around. You've been listening to the Walled Garden podcast. For more episodes just like these, or to join our community, go to thewalledgarden.com. See you there.